Exposed, 7 Sinister Reasons Why Crossing the Forbidden Line Can Haunt Your Life Forever. Claire Miller sat at the kitchen table, breathing in the warmth of the morning sun filtering through the faded curtains. The peace of her suburban Westfield home was a thin veil over an unsettling truth. For every idyllic scene, a landscape lawn, kids laughing as they rode their bikes, there lurked a dark history just beyond sight. "Don't cross the forbidden line," the warning echoed in her mind, a whisper igniting the shreds of her anxiety. It was a line marked by a rusty, decaying fence bordering the old Parker Industries complex, an eerie relic that locals whispered about in hushed tones at the diner where she worked. She shook her head, brushing away the fog of unease. Nothing happened in their quiet town, right? Yet the stories still festered like an open wound, tales of hauntings, children who vanished without a trace. It was the stuff of late-night gossip, easily tossed aside over coffee and pie, until those tales crept solidly into the realm of reality. Then came the text. An anonymous number sending a shiver down her spine. "Don't cross the forbidden line." Claire had immediately dismissed it an empty prank. She told herself, however, each word crawled into her mind, poisoning her thoughts. She had enough to worry about with her 2 boys, Timmy and Jake. Another shift was calling, and she could already feel the weight of exhaustion pulling at her. But all of that changed when Timmy, with his boundless energy and reckless spirit, dared to step through that rusted fence. "Promise to come back," Claire had yelled, her voice tight with fear, but the moment lingered in the air like a ghost long before she heard the laughter of other kids echo into the distance. When Timmy didn't return, dread enveloped her like a suffocating blanket. Panic shot through her, a white-hot pulse in her veins. She called the local police, but they shrugged it off. "Just boys being boys," they said dismissively. Claire's trust exploded like a bubble, leaving her stranded in seas of despair. Determined, Claire stormed toward the rusty line. As she crossed it, a chilly wind whispered its greeting, carrying with it the scent of decay and memories that had no business resurfacing. Broken machinery loomed, graffiti told tales of lost souls, and silence hung thick. Every house was a fortress of secrets, each smile hiding a sharp edge. Claire felt eyes on her. Were they watching her? The mothers who waved just hours ago now felt like predators lurking in the shadows, their kindness twisted with suspicion. The thrill of hope drained as reality sank in. They weren't just neighbors, they were accomplices in the town's darkness. A sudden scream shattered the stillness. It rang through the air like a warning bell. Claire's heart raced, a runaway train in her chest. Was that Timmy? Or something sinister lurking within the shadows? In that moment, she realized crossing the line wasn't a mistake, it was a descent into a nightmare that wouldn't let go. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Desperation clawed at Claire's thoughts as she plunged deeper into the belly of the industrial ruins. Each step was a heartbeat of dread. The whispers returned, echoes of betrayals from her loved ones and forgotten lies entwined with her own family's history. The feeling that she couldn't trust anyone clawed at her sanity. As she reached the spot where shadows twisted unnaturally, another piercing scream rang out, colder than before. Was it Timmy? Or was the darkness finally claiming its sacrifice? Because in that moment, Claire knew that the terror she feared had teeth and it was hungry. Claire's heart thundered in her chest as she moved through the debris, each piece of crumbling concrete a reminder of faded lives and lost hopes. Shadows stretched and twisted along the walls like fingers reaching out to drag her further into the darkness. The air grew denser, a palpable weight pressing against her lungs, making it hard to breathe. "Timmy!" she called, her voice hoarse, desperation flooding her. Silence echoed back, wrapping around her like a noose. She stumbled deeper, past shattered windows and rusted pipes that groaned under the weight of invisible memories. Every creak and pop sent jolts of fear through her. Was she alone? Or was someone watching her? The scent of something rancid hung in the air, unmistakable and sickening. It twisted her stomach, pushing her to fight against the encroaching panic. She lit her phone as flashlight, its beam slicing through the murky gloom. The light danced like a frightened firefly, illuminating the outline of something unnatural in the corner of her eye. Claire jerked her head, but it vanished before she could focus, leaving only uncertainty in its wake. "Timmy!" She screamed again, louder this time. The silence was crushing, then she heard a soft shuffle, like footsteps retreating hastily down a dark hallway. She darted towards the sound, her breath quickening. It was her son, it had to be. But as she rounded a corner, the corridor stretched ahead, impossibly long, like something straight out of a nightmare. The bustle of the outside world faded, leaving only the cadence of her racing heart drumming in her ears. "Mom!" A childish voice, weak and trembling, floated down the hall. Claire felt a surge of hope. "Mom, I'm here." The relief crashed into her like a wave, almost knocking her off her feet. She followed the sound, pushing through the shadows, her heart soaring at the thought of wrapping her arms around her boy again. She came upon a small, dimly lit room, cluttered with remnants of once thriving machinery. "Timmy?" She called out, the name escaping her lips like a prayer. Her breath caught in her throat when she saw him. Kneeling on the ground, looking lost, a mere silhouette against the room's darkness. His back was turned, and he seemed to be talking to someone or something. "Timmy!" Claire rushed forward, every instinct screaming for her to reach him. But the moment her hand brushed against his shoulder, he spun around, eyes wide with terror, tears streaming down his face. "Mom, don't!" he screamed, pointing behind her, his voice breaking. Claire turned, the world slowing as dread curled in her stomach. Shadows seemed to pulse and twist, coiling together into a figure that had no business existing in this space. A dark outline, faceless, yet somehow profoundly suffocating in its presence. It watched her with an intensity that chilled her to the bone. "Run!" Timmy shouted, but it was too late. The air thickened, a scream bubbling inside her like a raging fire, desperate to escape. They needed to leave. But the figure moved, gliding toward them with a speed that defied logic, an aura of malevolence wrapping around it like a cloak. Just as they turned to flee, a cold hand grasped her wrist, pulling her back. "Mom!" Timmy's voice cracked with fear, cutting through the darkness as Claire felt herself being dragged. She fought against the grip, panic erupting like fire inside her veins. As she tore herself free, the world tilted, shadows clawing at her heels. They sprinted down the corridor, the darkness bearing down on them, an insatiable hunger lurking just behind, eager to reclaim what it had lost. They burst through a door, out into a small forested area behind the complex, silence washing over them like a wave. But the eeriness was electric, the sense that they were not alone still crackled in the air. "Did you see it?" Timmy panted, eyes wide, reflecting pure terror. "See what?" Claire gasped, her chest heaving. But as she turned to face the building, now just a looming silhouette against the fading light, a chill gripped her heart. The shadows hadn't given up. And worse, something was rushing back to take what it believed was its due. "Run!" She shouted again, but this time, the fear pulsed through her, wrapping tightly around her throat. Timmy grabbed her hand, and they raced into the depths of the trees, but could they escape the past that came calling? As they fled, the forest grew darker, the weight of unseen eyes pressing down harder than ever. And soon, they would discover the depths of the line they had crossed, and the cost that came with it. But deep within the foliage, whispered promises lingered, the kind that could trap a soul forever. Branches whipped against Claire's arms, their sharp edges nicking her skin. She struggled to keep pace with Timmy, who pulled her forward through the dense forest. Panic filled her chest, twisting and tightening the muscles until she could barely breathe. Heart pounding, she cast glances over her shoulder, expecting to see the faceless figure emerging from the shadows. Timmy stumbled, and Claire felt her heart lurch. She crouched beside him, pulling him to her in a fierce embrace. "Are you okay?" she whispered, scanning the dark forest, every rustling leaf sending shivers coursing through her. "Mom, it saw me," he whimpered, his voice small and muffled. They had to keep moving. The moment she let fear pin them to the ground, they'd become easy prey. "We need to run, Timmy. Come on." As they surged forward, the forest felt alive. Trees twisted strangely, their branches spiraling toward the sky like skeletal hands. Shadows danced among the trunks, shifting and stirring, mocking their fear. Where were they? How deep had they gone into this unwelcoming world? Timmy grabbed her hand tighter, his small fingers digging into her palm, grounding her even as terror clawed at her edges. "Mom, I'm scared." "Me too," she admitted, her breath shaky but steady. "But we have to find a way out." Suddenly, the ground beneath her foot crumbled, sending her stumbling forward. She caught herself against a tree, heart racing even faster now. What the hell was that? Timmy's eyes were wide with terror. "Look!" He pointed toward a low ditch, partially hidden by overgrown weeds. There, nestled between the roots of a fallen tree, was something dark and glistening. Clara's stomach turned, it looked almost like a hand. "No, no," Claire murmured, stepping back. "Let us go." But as they turned to leave, the air thickened, and a low hum echoed through the trees. It vibrated in her chest, a haunting melody that called to her, stronger than any fear she'd ever known. She froze, caught in its spell, unable to will her legs to move. Timmy tugged at her sleeve, panic multiplying in his eyes. "Mom, we're not safe here." I know. But the voice in her head grew louder, weaving promises of power, of revelations that would rid the darkness they had yet touched. It was intoxicating, yet then, beneath that alluring song, she felt something else, a whisper of dread, a warning. The hand in the ditch moved, she could almost swear it twitched. "Claire!" Timmy shouted, shaking her, that snapped her back. Fear surged back to the surface, overriding the haunting song's call. With a gasp, she took hold of his hand. "Run!" They tore through the underbrush, barely following a discernible path. The world warped around them, the trees contorting into grotesque shapes that whispered secrets of souls lost. She could hear the hum beneath their pounding steps, a sinister reminder that they weren't alone. The air turned frigid, and Claire shivered. The darkness congealed into a mass of eyes, staring hungrily at their retreating figures. "Mom, it's coming!" Timmy screamed, looking back. Claire didn't dare glance over her shoulder. Instead, she pushed harder against the branches, reaching to snag them, towards any light she thought she could see up ahead. Just as she thought they were breaking free, she skidded to a stop. Before them lay a clearing that felt wrong. Murky water pooled at its center, and the stench of decay wafted toward them. The surface shimmered like oil, an oily black that absorbed light rather than reflected it. And surrounding it? Figures shrouded in shadow, their forms indistinguishable, turning to face her. "We shouldn't have come here," Timmy breathed, pleading. In that moment, Claire realized the figures weren't merely shadows, they were boundaries of a darker truth. She took a step back, her heart hammering, when from the depths of the black water, a voice whispered her name, sweet and sibilant. Claire, her blood ran cold. "Timmy, move!" But the ground shifted again. Before she could pull her son back, vines shot up, snaring Timmy's legs, pulling him toward the blighted pool. His cries pierced the air, raw and panicked, wrapping around her like chains. "Mom! Help!" She lunged forward, but the world shifted once more, stretching time into a painful eternity. "Hold on, Timmy!" She screamed, but the shadows closed in, pulling him deeper into suffocating darkness. And then Claire felt it, a thin cold finger brushing against her neck. "Welcome, you've crossed the line," it hissed, with Timmy's terrified screams echoing in her mind. Claire knew she had only moments left to either save him or succumb to the depths herself. But how far was she willing to go? The whispers called to her again, and in that moment of hesitation, something else stirred within her, a power that promised her son's safety but demanded an awful price. The vines tightened around Timmy's legs, dragging him closer to the black water. Claire's heart raced, each beat resonating with the panic in her veins. "Don't let go, Timmy! I'm coming!" She lunged forward, fingers slipping over the slick, dark roots that snaked across the ground. The shadows surrounding the pool twisted, whispering secrets that sent chills down her spine. Their voices tangled with the chilling hum that pulsed through the air, a dark lullaby that clawed at her mind. "Mom! It's pulling me!" Timmy's voice cracked, filled with terror as he struggled against the grip of the creeping vines. "Just hold on. Please!" Claire screamed, her body coiling with desperation. She grasped at one of the vines, ripping it away, but another tightened around his ankle like a serpent. In the murky depths, movement caught her eye. Forms shifted just beneath the surface, dark shapes that swirled and writhed. An unbearable weight pressed down on her chest, and every instinct screamed for her to retreat. But she couldn't. Not now. With a sudden surge of anger, she sank her hands into the muck surrounding the pool, clawing for purchase. As her fingers brushed against something hard, she pulled whatever it was out into the moonlight. It was a necklace, glistening with blood-red stones, pulsing like a heartbeat. A voice hissed in her ear. "Claim it, and your son will remain safe and oh." She fumbled it in her hands, and time paused for a second, the shadows vibrating in anticipation. The hum grew louder, stronger in her chest. The promise was intoxicating, seductive. But the fear, the dread, those were real. "Mom! Mommy!" Timmy cried, his voice dripping with desperation. She couldn't think about the darkness beckoning her. Claire had to act. She tore the necklace apart, scattering the stones into the murky water. Oddly, the shadows recoiled, but only for a moment. "Timmy!" She pulled harder, and finally, the vine around his ankle loosened just enough for her to grab his hand. She focused everything on him, her strength pouring into their connection. Then, just as she thought she could pull him back, the water surged up, black tendrils reaching, stretching toward them like 100 gnashing teeth. "You've disturbed sacred ground. You can't leave." Timmy's little hands gripped hers like a vice, and Claire didn't think. She dove into the murky water, pulling him with her, her heart screaming as the cold enveloped them like a vice. Pain shot through her chest as she struggled to swim deeper. She fought against the darkness surrounding them, desperation fueling her movements. "Timmy, just breathe. I want to let go." Suddenly, the pressure from all sides lifted, as if something powerful took notice of their struggle. They shot upwards, bursting through the surface and gasping for air. Claire blinked against the pale moonlight flooding the clearing. They were free from the pool, but the darkness was relentless. Figures loomed at the edge of the clearing, aggressive whispers sharpening the night around them. The air crackled, their eyes glimmering with anticipation. Claire scooped Timmy into her arms, scanning the perimeter for escape. "Run, Mom! Please, now!" They sprinted toward the forest, dodging the crowning shadows that reached for them, but the darkness chased. Claire could hear the whispers growing louder, wrapping around them, tightening like a noose. "Bring her back. You're nothing without the power." Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. She could feel the weight of the necklace in her pocket, its promise coursing through her. The road ahead forked into two. One path offered a retreat toward the light, while the other led deeper into the trees where the darkness thrived and pulsed with malicious energy. "Mom, which way?" Timmy's face was pale, eyes wide and scared. It was a choice, a moment suspended within the chaos. Her mind raced. Claire, the voice called her name again, slithering through the air like a serpent. Beneath the stares of the shadows, it was all too clear. Whatever power lay hidden in the darkness was ready to trade, ready to make her part of its twisted expansion. "Choose it," whispered, and for the first time, she felt the lure of that power like a soft caress. In that split second, she grasped Timmy's hand tightly, caught between hope and despair. "Come on!" she yelled, but the ground trembled beneath her. Would she cut through the dark or embrace it? The shadows shifted, their hunger palpable, the choice weighing heavily in the air. But in her heart, a terror and a question lingered. What would be lost if she accepted the darkness? As the shadows lunged forward, Claire saw only one way out. But as she ran, she felt the necklace slip from her pocket, landing softly on the forest floor with a chilling echo. And even from behind, the whispering informed her of the price of her decision. Timmy's grip faltered, and Claire felt a cold shiver crawl up her spine as they darted deeper into the trees. The moonlight struggled to pierce through the thick canopy above, drowning them in shadows that seemed almost alive. Every rustle of the leaves, every snap of a twig echoed ominously, heightening her dread. "Mom, are they behind us?" Timmy whispered, his tiny voice shaking with fear. Claire didn't dare to look back. "Just keep running," she urged, her own heart pounding like a war drum. They pushed through the underbrush, legs trembling with fatigue, but her adrenaline fueled their flight. The oppressive whispers hung in the air, echoing her name, taunting her with every step, a chorus of discontent promising to reclaim what was theirs. The darkness felt alive, swirling around them like a thick fog that clung to her skin. Claire could only imagine what lurked behind them. She could sense it, a weight of malevolence breathing down their necks, feeding off their fear. Suddenly, Timmy stumbled. He cried out as he tumbled to the ground, scraping his knee against the jagged roots. I can't run anymore. No, Timmy. Get up. Claire felt a surge of terror. The shadows crept closer. She grabbed his small hand, urging him. We have to go. Now. Timmy's lip quivered as he nodded, but his legs shook beneath him as if they were made of jelly. Claire knew they couldn't stop. She helped him to his feet, wrapping her arm around him. The path twisted ahead, narrowing into a slick, muddy trail that dove deeper into the heart of the darkness. Mom, where's the light? He gasped, his face pale and drawn with anguish. The air became thick, too heavy to breathe. The whispers grew louder, coalescing into chaotic shouts. You belong to the shadows. The darkness is your kin. The confidence she once felt now twisted into uncertainty. Behind them, the ground quaked, shadows surged, and tendrils reached toward them with an unyielding hunger. Claire saw a faint shimmer of illumination ahead. Hope flickered in her chest, a desperate flame. There. We go that way. She pointed, leading Timmy with trembling urgency. They broke through the dense underbrush only to find themselves at a vast clearing. Wisps of fog swirled and danced around the edges under the haunted light of the moon. Claire's breath caught in her throat. A circle of ancient trees loomed, their gnarled branches curling like ghoulish hands beckoning her forward. Mom, please. Timmy whimpered, adrenaline giving way to panic. What's happening? It's okay, we just need to get across, she said, tightening her grip on his arm. The ground trembled beneath them, and a laughter echoed, pouring from the very bark of the trees, shivering their leaves in delight. But as they took a step closer, the shadows began to seep from the woods, stretching hungrily toward them, as if trying to pull them back into the darkness from which they had fled. Claire felt the weight of the necklace tempt her again, pulling her thoughts away from escape, whispering of power. It felt like a rusted key to an unseen door. Mom! Timmy's grip tightened as horror washed over him. Don't listen to it. I know, sweetie. She gasped, desperately shaking her head to clear the fog of fear. She'd made a choice before. She wouldn't choose it again, but the circle of trees seemed to pulse, throb. As Claire stepped toward them, she felt an invisible tether pull her in, an invitation cloaked in darkness and danger. The echoes rattled her mind. In that moment of silent chaos, a shadow lunged from behind, wrapping around her legs like icy fingers. No! No! Claire screamed, clutching Timmy to her chest as she fought against the darkness pulling her down. But voices licked at her brain, suggestions that wove seduction and terror together, testing her will. Why run from your birthright? They urged. Join us, become one with the night. Desperation surged through her veins. She stretched for the glimmering light ahead, but every second felt like eternity as the shadows tightened their grip. Timmy's cries echoed, and Claire filled her lungs with defiance. She would not succumb to this madness. She wouldn't lose her son. Run, Timmy! Run! She cried, pushing him away from the shadows as she fought against the dark, digging her heels into the earth, resisting with every ounce of strength she had left. And just as she felt herself straining against the darkness, pulling, pleading, the faint glow of light expanded, illuminating the clearing. But in that small glimmer, a horrifying realization hit her. The trees were not merely wood and bark, they were roots of power, the very source of the darkness, ready to bind them forever. Claire turned, determination igniting as she faced the encroaching shadow. Would she truly have to face it to save Timmy? Mom, please. Timmy's voice trembled with fear, and their fates hung precariously in the balance as the darkness surged forward once more. Without thinking, Claire lunged toward the light. Would it protect them or swallow them whole? The shadow snarled, their whispers sharper and more desperate. In that crushing moment of impending choice, she realized she might have to unleash the darkness within her to combat it. Would she dare embrace it or fight to the bitter end? The air pulsed with tension as they collided with uncertainty. The light flickered, casting eerie shadows against the twisted trunks of the trees. Claire's heart raced in her chest, pounding fiercely like a war drum, the echoes of the past reverberating in her mind. The whispers grew more urgent, a cacophony of voices urging her to surrender. And that darkness, it was thickening, coiling around her like a serpent ready to strike. "Mom, I'm scared!" Timmy cried, his tiny voice a whisper of desperation. "Stay close to me," Claire shouted, fighting the urge to look back at the relentless shadows closing in. The cold fingers of fear wrapped around her throat like a noose, tightening with every heartbeat. She could almost feel their presence looming just behind her, like a predator preparing to pounce. The light ahead felt like a distant shore against a raging sea. Would it truly guide them to safety, or was it just another trick of the darkness? Gritting her teeth, Claire pushed forward, refusing to let the shadows consume her. As they surged toward the light, the trees seemed to groan, their gnarled branches clawing at the sky as if trying to protest the intrusion. "You cannot escape us!" resonated from their hollow trunks, sending shivers racing down Claire's spine. She pressed her lips together, determined not to show her fear. Timmy stumbled again, falling to his knees. "Mom, I'm tired. I can't do this." Claire felt an overwhelming rush of panic. If she didn't get him to the light, they might be lost forever. "Get up, Timmy. I need you to keep going." She grabbed his arm, hoisting him up as dread pooled in her stomach. Suddenly, the whispers turned mocking. "Join us. You belong among the shadows." They echoed from every angle, surrounding them like a crushing wave. The shadows seemed to writhe, forming shapes that danced just beyond the edges of her vision. Then Claire noticed something, a shimmer of movement amid the swirling darkness. A figure emerged, dark and distorted, a silhouette that rippled with malevolence. It hovered at the edge of the light, watching them with cold, hungry eyes. "You cannot deny your true nature," it intoned, its voice smooth yet laced with menace. Timmy clung to her leg, trembling in terror. Claire's heart pounded in her ears. "We're not going with you," she shouted defiantly, pulling Timmy closer, resolute. But inside, doubt gnawed at her resolve. "Mom, please," Timmy whimpered. "I don't want to be here anymore." In that pit of anguish, Claire felt the darkness offer her a choice, a temptation wrapped in swirling shadows and promises of power. The necklace around her neck pulsed with an energy that beckoned her. She could feel it thrumming, waiting. "Do you want to protect your son?" the voice taunted. "Embrace what you are. Unleash the darkness within." Every breath felt heavy. With a fervent desire to shield Timmy from the horrors closing in, she stepped toward the light, clutching her son tightly. "We're going to make it," she cried, but she felt herself wavering, feet sinking into the ground, the roots of the ancient trees intertwining with her own. "No! Don't listen!" Timmy screamed, terror flashing in his eyes. The shadows surged forward, tendrils lashing out, wrapping around Claire's ankles, tugging at her with icy fingers. She could feel them pulling her in, dragging her closer to the dark figure's waiting embrace. With a surge of adrenaline, Claire shouted, "Hold on tight!" She wrenched herself free from their grasp and bolted toward the flickering light with all the strength she could muster, desperate to break free from the shadow's temptation. Timmy's small form struggled in her arms, but fear propelled her forward. The light pulsed, drawing them in as the shadows screamed behind them, the darkness howling in rage. But just as they were about to reach the safety of the light, the ground beneath them churned. From it, dark forms began rising, faces twisted in agony. "You cannot escape your past," they moaned. Claire's breath hitched. What are they?" "Mom, run!" Timmy yelled. With every ounce of energy left, she dodged the hands that reached out, grasping. The world turned chaotic. Shadows battling light as she shattered through the barrier of darkness, and then they were through, but something was different. The light, once welcoming, felt cold and sterile, a hollow comfort that sent chills through her veins. "I think we made it," Claire whispered, glancing around, uncertainty creeping into her mind like a chilling fog. But Timmy shook his head, eyes wide with fear. "Mom, they're still here." As Claire turned slowly, dread welled inside her. The shadows remained, lingering just outside the light's reach, eyes full of malice, waiting for their moment to strike. The lingering question pressed at the back of her mind: was this truly safety, or just a veil masking deeper horrors yet to be revealed? And then the whispers returned, soft yet sinister. Your journey is just beginning. Claire's breath came in short gasps, each intake a reminder that they had escaped one nightmare only to step into another. The cold light around them was harsh, illuminating their surroundings in a way that felt clinical, not like a sanctuary, but more like a trap that revealed the true terrors lurking in its shadows. "Mom, I don't like it here," Timmy murmured, his small body trembling beside her. "It's wrong. I can feel it." She knelt down, wrapping her arms around him, trying to infuse him with a sense of safety. "It's okay, Timmy. We're safe now." But her voice wavered, lacking conviction. The flickering light danced around them, casting sharp angles that seemed to reach out, eager to pull them back into the darkness. "But they're still here," Timmy whimpered, his eyes wide. He pointed into the depth of the shadows where the figures twisted and writhed, just beyond the light's grasp. The faces were familiar, tortured remnants of phantoms that seemed to be drawn to them, their mouths moving in soundless cries. Claire's eyes went wide. She recognized them now, faces she had hoped to forget. Long-buried memories clawed their way to the surface, painful reminders of choices she couldn't erase. Could they see her? Had they followed her here? "Timmy, we have to," she began, but the shadows swelled closer, their malevolent whispers growing louder until they washed over her like a tidal wave. "No escape, you will join us now," Claire shouted, fighting against the mounting dread that threatened to crush her spirit. "Mom, please," Timmy cried, pressing his small frame against her. "We need to go." The light pulsed violently, sensing their fear, as if it was a living entity caught in a battle of wills. Claire tugged at Timmy, moving toward the thin barrier that separated them from the encroaching figures. With each step, the darkness recoiled, but then surged forward, clawing at the edges of the light, ready to snatch them back. "Don't look away. Keep running." Claire's voice rang out, determined yet filled with a despairing edge. They pushed forward, but the ground felt alive, shifting beneath their feet. Roots protruded like grasping fingers, attempting to hold them back. "Mom!" Timmy screamed, losing his footing. "Help!" In a panic, Claire lunged forward, grabbing him before he fell completely. But as she hoisted him back up, her hands glided over something slimy and dark, a shadow disintegrating into a mass beneath her fingers. The urge to recoil was overpowering, but she fought against it, feeling the thrill of fear crackle through her body. The shadows grew restless, howling in fury at her defiance. "You cannot hide. You cannot escape." Their voices melded into a sinister symphony, layering the air with chilling dissonance that made her skin crawl. With a sudden burst of resolve, Claire yanked Timmy close again, returning to their flight. "Don't stop. We'll find another way." But the dark figures began to coalesce, solidifying into monstrous forms that were no longer just shadows. Faces twisted in rage, eyes alight with hunger, they loomed closer, the air cold and rancid with a sense of inevitable doom. And then came the voice she feared the most, the one that resonated from deep within her memory, her own voice, twisted and mocking. "You cannot outrun your choices, Claire. They follow you. They always have." "Mom, look!" Timmy cried, pointing upward. Claire turned, and her heart sank like a stone. Above them, beyond the light, a gaping maw opened wide, revealing the depths of darkness inside, an endless void hungry for their souls. "We have to go. Now!" she shouted, pulling Timmy back as the shadows rushed forward to envelop them. The light flickered again, dimming with each frantic heartbeat. They stumbled backward, the abyss drawing closer with insatiable greed. "Where do we go?" Timmy's question echoed in her ears, reverberating as her heart thudded violently in her chest. As panic surged within her, Claire realized there was no easy escape. Not this time. The darkness was inside her, waiting for a moment of weakness. And as the shadows lunged with an outpouring of wrath, she could only wonder, could she confront the monsters of her past, or would they consume them whole, dragging them back into despair? The fissures cracked wide enough to swallow them, and Claire felt herself teeter on the brink. Would she choose to face her truth, or would the darkness finally claim its prize? The shadows encroached, their grasping tendrils stretching toward Claire and Timmy like a hungry beast. The air thickened, a cold fog invading her lungs while her mind raced, scrambling for an escape. "We have to be brave, Timmy," she whispered, though fear tightened its grip around her throat. Mom Timmy's voice trembled, laced with a chilling recognition as if he sensed what lay just beyond the light. Claire could feel his small hand shaking against her arm, weighty with a terror that echoed her own. The sinister forms solidified into grotesque figures, faces morphing into a haunting array of remorse and anguish. They were lost souls, trapped in a hell of their own making, and Claire knew they bore witness to her sins. The voice that reverberated through her mind the mocking echoes of her past demanded to be acknowledged. "You thought you could escape? No, Claire. You created this for us. Run!" Claire shouted. Without waiting for Timmy's response, she yanked him toward the flickering light. Each step felt like treacle, the ground beneath them pulling, begging them to relent. The faces twisted into sneering masks of pain as they swelled closer, mouths whispering taunts she couldn't comprehend. She felt the edges of consciousness threatening to unravel. "Mom!" Timmy cried again, his voice tinged with desperation. "We'll never get away." The light flickered out of sync before her eyes, and Claire stumbled as the shadows lunged, brushing past her like a frigid wind. Everything went dark. Panic gripped her heart as they were swallowed by the abyss. Then, a single breath of faint glow ignited within, illuminating her surroundings in a sickly hue. They stood in what appeared to be a clearing within the darkness, the air thick with the scent of decay. "Where are we?" Timmy whimpered, eyes darting. "We need to keep moving," Claire urged, but her resolve wavered with every beat of silence that followed, the stillness heavy as if time had paused. The figures lingered just outside the perimeter of light, whispering veiled secrets from the depths, their words entwined with Claire's own fears. "Mom, what do they want?" Timmy's voice trembled, breaking her from the trance of her thoughts. "They want answers," Claire whispered, as a horrific realization gripped her. These shadows were her thoughts made manifest, her failures twisted into the very fabric of their surroundings. "They want me to remember what I tried to forget." The shadows surged toward them, a cacophony of angry shrieks filling the air. "Join us, Claire!" They howled, their voices blending into one cacophonous banshee cry, relentless in their pursuit. "You cannot escape!" "Enough!" Claire shouted, the words erupting like gunpowder igniting. She turned on her heels, squeezing Timmy's hand tightly. "We're not afraid of you." She stood her ground, heart pounding as she faced the advancing mass. "Are you sure?" A familiar voice slid into her consciousness, chilling her core. It was the voice of someone she never wanted to hear again. "What have you done? You cannot deny your failures. They will consume you, Claire. No. I won't let you win," she shouted, a surge of defiance washing over her. The shadows responded with laughter, and Claire felt her strength falter. An inky vortex began to spiral at her feet, drawing everything closer into its depths. "We're running out of time." Timmy's voice broke through the overwhelming dread, ground beneath his feet beginning to crumble. She caught sight of a pathway, a seemingly innocuous slit between two thick shadows. "There! We can go that way." Hope flickered, a small flame in the face of terror, but as they bolted toward it, the darkness roared, coiling defiantly to block their pathway. Claire felt the cold reach out again, washing over her, urging her to surrender. As they stumbled in fear, Claire's mind raced. Had she ever truly been free, or had the darkness simply been waiting for the right moment to reclaim her? "Mom!" Timmy wailed, surprise and fear clinging to his every word as if he anticipated the horrors lying ahead. What awaited them in the depths, beyond the veil of shadows? Claire swallowed, heart pounding louder than the shadows closing in. "Let us go, Timmy!" she cried, determination flaring like fire. But as they surged toward the path, the shadows reared back. "You cannot escape your truth," they shouted, a chilling reminder that the past was never truly buried. And then everything went dark again, a visceral silence wrapping around them. Would they find a way through, or was this what awaited them, an unending struggle against their own demons? A shiver coursed through Claire as the darkness swallowed them whole. Silence wrapped around her like a thick, suffocating blanket, the weight of despair filling the void that had replaced the cacophony of the shadows. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown, a cruel reminder of how alive she still was in this nightmarish realm.
What is happening, Mom?
Timmy's voice trembled, barely breaching the stillness.
I don't know, Claire managed to gasp.
Panic surged in her throat, but she fought to keep her voice steady. The suffocating quiet amplified her fears. A flicker of uncertainty ignited in the darkness. The shadows coiled at the edges of her vision, patient and awful. They waited, like wolves lurking in the underbrush, eager for any sign of weakness. Suddenly, the silence shattered. A loud, echoing clash like metal scraping against stone rebounded through the void. Claire jerked, adrenaline surging, and she felt Timmy's small hand tighten around hers.
Stay close,
she snapped, heart racing. The darkness around them shimmered momentarily, revealing glimpses of impossibly twisted faces just beyond her reach, people she recognized, but not as they once were. The oppressed souls of her past rose from the shadows, adorned in grief and rage, their eyes burning with accusation. Among them, a familiar figure stood out, her mother, face twisted with a sorrow that sliced deeper than any knife. Claire, her mother's voice floated through the dark, both pleading and condemning.
Why did you leave us? You cannot hide forever. Shut up!
Claire screamed, but the sound felt feeble against the depth of her mother's gaze. The pain reflected back at her was unmistakable, a mirror of every guilt she'd buried under layers of denial.
Why do you keep running?
The shadows hissed, as more faces joined the throng. They edged closer, their outstretched hands stealing the warmth from the air.
Face it, Claire. You can't escape who you are. You owe it to us, to yourself. Bile rose in her throat. Could they really know her so deeply, her insecurities, the cowardice that colored her darkest moments?
Timmy whimpered beside her, drawing her attention back with a fearful gaze.
Mom, please. I want to go home. Home.
The word clawed at her heart, mixing longing with stark reality.
We'll find a way, she murmured, desperately trying to believe it. Just stay with me. The shadows surged, pressing in on them, walls of darkness closing tighter. Remember the night you chose yourself over us?
1,000 voices mocked, rising like a tempesta.
You walked away. Now you must pay the price. They won't let you go. Timmy shouted, voice breaking.
No, she said, her heart pounding, adrenaline igniting recklessness within her.
We won't stay. Not here. She yanked Timmy closer, heart racing with renewed determination. Follow me.
Claire darted forward, plunging into the thickest part of the darkness, dodging the skeletal hands clawing to pull them back into personal hell. Each pulse of panic pushed her forward, but the air grew heavier, stifling. Suddenly, a scream ripped through the silence, the sound of a soul breaking. It echoed around them, wrapping around Claire like the chill of death. She looked over her shoulder. The figures were turning on one another, hunger and rage igniting in their tormented faces. They clawed and fought, infighting, their hands unable to tear apart what had become their own shadowy prison.
Now's our chance, Claire shouted.
She felt the briefest flicker of hope, fueled by the chaos. They were all lost, and in their relentless fight, there was a moment of disorder that could be their salvation. Claire pulled Timmy, racing toward the thin sliver of light that flickered ahead, praying it wasn't another illusion. As they surged forward, a long finger of shadow lashed out, slicing through the air.
Claire! Time seemed to freeze, the shadows retaliating in fury.
You will not escape what you've wrought. Sprinting faster, she grasped Timmy's hand tighter.
Don't look back! She screamed.
The world around her distorted. She felt the rush of the chase. A flicker of light was growing, but in the haze, she could feel the cold grip of despair trying to pull her down. Would they push through, or would they fall victim to shadows that thrived on regret and guilt? The path loomed closer, wind sweeping snow like darkness behind them. Claire's breath quickened. Just a bit further. Then came a deafening scream. The sound pierced her eardrums, her heart nearly stopped. Something snagged on her jacket, dragging her back.
Panic clawed at her throat. Mom!
Timmy's voice echoed, desperate and thin, as the shadows reached out, ravenous for one last toll. Racing hearts and looming despair collided into chaos as Claire found herself throat-deep in her own darkness, the light just beyond her reach. But before she could wrench free, she felt it, the unforgiving grasp of the shadowed past tightening around her. And in that terrifying moment, she had to wonder, how much of her past would she have to face to find her way out? Would the light guide them home, or would they vanish, swallowed whole by the shadows of their own making? The light flickered dimly, its cold glow barely illuminating the twisted shadows that loomed just behind. Claire's heart raced as she fought against the darkness clinging to her. The echoes of torment rose around them like a tide, a cacophony of regrets piercing through her resolve. She could feel Timmy's small hand trembling in hers, desperation and fear radiating off him in waves. "Keep running!" she shouted, her voice straining against the oppressive weight of sorrow trying to pull them back. But just as they drew closer to the shimmering beacon, the shadows grew frantic, coiling like vipers. The cries of lost souls filled the air, haunting melodies of what could have been. "You can't escape. You owe us." They howled, their words nascent with bitterness. "No!" Claire shot back, determination surging within her. She remembered their faces, the pain they bore, the choices that haunted her. But she wasn't going to let them keep her son. They wouldn't take Timmy. "Timmy, stay by me," she urged, gripping his hand tighter as they plunged forward into the light. Plasma-like, the shadows stretched, their ghostly hands closing in, but Claire felt something shift within her, a spark igniting the remnants of her courage. Timmy stumbled, nearly losing his balance, and Claire snatched him up, steadying him against her. "We'll get through this," she shouted fiercely. Ahead, an opening began to widen, revealing a shimmering passage that promised freedom. "That's it. We can make it." Clara's heart thundered as they rushed toward the light, each step an act of rebellion against the shadowy force pushing against them. Just as they were about to cross the threshold, the shadows surged once more. A thick tendril lashed out and wrapped around her ankle with a grip like ice, tugging fiercely, demanding her submission. "Join us, Claire. You belong here. Let go!" Claire roared, fighting against the darkness' grasp. The cold seeped into her very bones, but she wasn't going to allow her past to ensnare them again. With a Herculean effort, she wrenched free and surged into the light, pulling Timmy with her. They stumbled forward and fell, landing on soft grass, a stark contrast to the dark, murky ground they had fled. A warm breeze brushed against them, whispering sweet nothings of reassurance. Where are we?" Timmy breathed, eyes wide, still clinging to her tightly. Claire looked around, wide-eyed as relief flooded her veins. They were no longer surrounded by shadows or whispers. They were in a sunlit meadow, the air fragrant with blooming flowers, and the laughter of children echoed in the distance, familiar and comforting. But just as hope began to bloom in her chest, the ground behind them started to tremble. The shadows were still there, swirling, angry at their escape. "You cannot run from us," they snarled, but Claire felt her courage stabilizing like roots spreading deep into the earth. "No," she said, rising to her feet. "We will not be taken back. Not again." Timmy looked up at her, eyes shining bright. "We're free, right?" "Yes, honey." "We are," Claire said, her heart swelling with protective love. As the shadows lurched closer, she felt a flicker of something powerful within, a torrent of strength fueled by her love for Timmy. She reached out, feeling the energy pooling at her fingertips, alive and ready. "Stay behind me," Claire instructed, stepping forward. "Get back. This is our home now," she shouted, sensing the darkness recoiling at her fervor. The whispers grew frantic, angry cries swirling around them like a storm. "You have no idea what you're rejecting. You belong to us." "No. I will not be defined by my past," Claire roared, unleashing the surge of power coursing through her. Light erupted from her hands, dazzling gold and warmth spilling forth, illuminating the dark expanse around them. The shadows writhed in agony, retreating under its brilliance, their forms disintegrating like mist. Timmy gasped in awe as the dark faces dissolved, their screams turning into whispers carried away by the wind. "Mom, you did it!" he cried joyfully as the cacophony faded into silence. The meadow felt safe, washed clean of the darkness that had lingered for so long. Claire knelt down, pulling Timmy into a fierce embrace as tears streamed down her face, a mix of relief and sorrow for what they had endured. "You're okay, Timmy. I've got you," she whispered, filled with warmth and love. They finally found their way home from the depths of despair to the light of hope. As the sun began to set, casting golds and pinks across the horizon, Claire felt a resolution settle in her heart. They could look forward now. The darkness would always be a part of her journey, a tapestry woven into her life, but it did not define them. Timmy lifted his small hand, pointing to the fading shadows being banished by the warm glow of the setting sun. "Look, Mom! They're leaving!" And Claire let out a breath she didn't know she had been holding. "Yes, they are. We are free now." As they began to walk forward into the twilight, hand in hand, Claire knew they would carry their lessons but write their own stories, filled with light, love, and endless possibilities. And just as promises of a new dawn began to break, she whispered into the breeze, "We will never cross that line again." But deep down, she knew sometimes the lines we draw are best left uncrossed. Thank you for joining Claire and Timmy on this wild journey. If you want to hear more stories like this, if you want to dive into more thrilling adventures that will keep you on the edge of your seat, then you need to subscribe immediately. Don't miss out on the next exclusive tale. Smash that like button now to pump up the algorithm and keep these stories coming. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. I want to hear what you think, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Show your support and be part of our growing community.